In about 24 hours, the voting for HIP 51 will close. This is perhaps the most impactful and important vote the helium community has taken part in, and it's very good that it looks like it will pass with flying colors. But what about this HIP is so good? Why will it add so much value to the helium network, and what do people against it have to say? There is a lot to cover regarding this HIP and this vote, but it ultimately lays the foundation for helium to become a multi-protocol network rather than just a LoRa one. I am extremely excited for this HIP to be passed, and certainly don't think that the recent HNT price outperformance is just a coincidence. Let's take a look at the details in today's video. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video here on the Crypto Compound channel. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope you guys are having a great day. Please hit that like and subscribe on the way in. In today's video, we are going to be discussing HIP 51, the vote that is closing in about 24 hours, possibly the most important vote that the helium community has taken a part of. We're going to talk about the benefits of HIP 51, a lot of the criticisms and I think misunderstandings of HIP 51, some of the reasons why HIP 51 is structured the way it is from the words of Amir and Tushar Jain themselves, and we will also be looking at recent price action since this HIP went up for vote. Now, guys, there is so much that has been going on with this HIP, and there are so many things that are dependent on this HIP. For example, all of the other sub-DAOs and all of the other protocols are reliant on HIP 51 actually passing. Now, guys, in order to understand HIP 51 from a high level, it is very important to look at this chart. This is probably the easiest way to comprehend what is going on with this new sub-DAO structure. But before we talk a little bit about this briefly, I want to say one thing. There is a famous quote from Elon Musk that he repeats in multiple interviews over the course of the past few years. And he always said that the most important thing for the human race is to become a multi-planetary species. And it's funny because when I hear that now and when I think of HIP 51, I think that the most important thing that the helium network can do is become a multi-protocol network. And that effectively is what HIP 51 is doing. As we can see, there are the HNT epoch emissions up here, and down below we can see that there are multiple sub-DAOs. Of course, we already have a 5G sub-DAO, which has been renamed the mobile sub-DAO, and we also have HIP 52, which is the IoT sub-DAO. Now, there's also a Wi-Fi sub-DAO that is a draft HIP already. I believe it is number 61. We'll take a look at that in just a few seconds, but you have to imagine all of these other protocols living beneath the L1, which is the broader helium network. Now, this has been discussed in multiple helium community calls with Tushar Jain. As you can see, these are some of the notes from those meetings, and you can see that Tushar and Amir here both reference helium, and they say helium needs to be multi-protocol. This has been in the works since about January when they began to introduce this new structure, and it is so important for helium to do this. This makes the market for what the helium network can do so much larger and so much more valuable, and it also makes it possible for helium to evolve as new protocols and new needs are discovered throughout time and in different parts of the world. Now, if we jump down here, we can see that the preliminary results are extraordinarily in favor of HIP 51. That is very, very good. It looks like it will certainly pass. And of course, as we know, like other HIPs, you do need 2/3 of the vote, not just 51%. But we are currently 96% in favor. So no worries there. Now, guys, before we jump into some of the confusion here around HIP 51 and what people are saying, I do really want to make a point of the helium outperformance over the past 2 weeks, and it happens to coincide with HIP 51. If we take a look here, we can see that helium is currently ranked number 48, up 13% over the past 7 days and over the past 24 hours. Both of those numbers are significantly bigger than their peers here. And if we look at the HNT price chart, we can see that when HNT vote went live was almost the exact lowest open and close day that helium had on the network since the beginning of this downturn, which is very, very interesting, extremely coincidental. But as we can see, we've had two massive green days here recently. We got rejected at this previous support line, and we seem to have broken it today, as well as a breakout down here on the RSI. All of this is looking very positive here, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's clear that HIP 51 is going to pass. And guys, I do really want to stress the HNT outperformance since this HIP vote went live. As you can see on the screen here, here is a picture of when HNT was at rank number 57. This was covered in a previous video. It's a snapshot from a previous video, but as you can see, we've climbed all the way from number 57 now to number 48. That is a tremendous movement in the span of about a week and a half. So guys, of course, now there are some people voting against the HIP, a small percentage, but there are some, and there are some people that are really letting their voices be heard here on Twitter in regards to being against this HIP. And as you can see, I think that this chart here that Helium has on their website is really confusing a lot of people. It seems as though this person here, Justin Freebie, I think that he is interpreting this as 1.2% of all rewards now are going to go to the IoT sub-DAO, which is basically the miners that exist today. However, what Helium is doing here is they are stressing the importance of having multiple protocols because it makes the market opportunity so much larger for the Helium network. These are all different protocols that Helium can now tap into rather than just LoRaWAN or IoT. And as you can see, Amir himself says a lot of confusion floating around this weekend from various YouTubers about Helium and HIP 51 changes that are being voted on. This chart below has confused a lot of LoRaWAN miners. It is not a reward split chart. It is a market opportunity chart, as we can see very clearly here. This is stressing the importance of having HIP 51 passed so that Helium can tap into these other protocols in these other markets. Now, guys, we can see that also the very beloved and well-known Voscoin also interpreted this 1.2% as putting a market value on LoRa. I don't think that's correct either. It is simply saying, it is expressing how important it is for Helium to be multi-protocol. That is the significance of 1.2% being so small, is that HIP 51 makes the market opportunity now so large. And as you can see, Amir did respond here and try to explain that the 1.2% is the global share of telecom markets for IoT, not specific to Helium. So a lot of confusion floating around, especially coming from Voscoin, who has a huge audience. So I think a lot of people must be getting confused from this, but I think it's very important that we do understand what they are trying to explain here. Now, guys, I want to show you one other thing that I found that is rather interesting. If we go here to the authors here of the Helium DAO HIP 51, the authors of this HIP, we can see one of them, or the main one, is Tushar Jain. He is one of the co-founders of Multicoin Capital. So you know where his incentives are. I always like to point that out because he clearly is trying to maximize the value of HNT and the Helium network. So it is very good to see him so involved in this HIP, and it makes sense why he is so in favor of it. But I wanted to point actually to this other author here, and if we go to his GitHub page, we can see a draft HIP for the Wi-Fi DAO. And here's another small image of what these sub-DAOs look like. As you can see, IoT, mobile, Wi-Fi, all sub-DAOs of the Helium network, and there's a lot more information here. Of course, this is still in draft mode, so I don't really want to dig too deep into this stuff, but you can see it gets very complex and there's a lot to talk about. This does include something similar to the mobile DAO that has some sort of a map running on your phone in order to verify coverage, which is extremely interesting, and I am certainly looking forward to more on that in the future and more on some of these potential airdrops for some of these new tokens that are introduced with these new protocols. And we'll talk about how that works, if you might be eligible. All of that will be rolled out as time moves forward and HIP 51 is passed. Now, lastly, guys, I want to point something out here. Amir here in this point number 2 makes a very interesting statement, and I think it ties back into what I was saying with regards to the HIP 51 vote coinciding with a low point here on the chart and us seeing massive outperformance ever since it went live and began to be clear that it will be passed. If we look here at what Amir says, he's addressing some of the questions about HIP 51 and why it is structured the way it is. And number 2 here says, One of the options is to launch a completely separate 5G token, which would cause anyone that had been buying HNT to speculate on 5G to sell HNT and buy the new 5G token. In parentheses, he says, this is a very large amount of money. You'll have to trust me on that one. Guys, that is really, really interesting, coming directly from Amir Helium here, the founder of Nova Labs. This is extremely interesting, and I think it really does serve the fact that this HIP is really driving people to have more confidence in the Helium network and to speculate on its future value. Let me know what you guys think. I know there was a lot to cover in this video. This is a hugely important HIP. If you haven't voted and you want to vote, go for it. But it looks like this HIP is going to be passed. Thanks to everyone here in the Helium community. Guys, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for watching until the end. I'm going to make sure to keep providing more consistent updates here with regards to Helium news and analysis. If you have not hit that subscribe and like button, please go ahead and do that now. Thank you all so much for being here, but that is all I have for today's video. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Just like that, this video is over, and I will see you